So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to the Cumbria Farmer Network podcast entitled Farming Friends and Rugby Legends, or something like that. So we're here tonight unashamedly with the My Name's Doddie Foundation in mind. We've all seen the TV pictures and the interviews with Doddie Weir and Rob Burrow and, of course, Stephen Darby fighting the MND dreadful condition, Motor Neurone Disease. And we just thought as a farming community and farmer network, it would be a nice idea to have a bit of a podcast with some very well-known farming rugby legends in Cumbria and try and raise money to support Doddie and the foundation. So let me introduce you to the team tonight, the crew. First off, we have Mark Lee. Good evening, Mark. How are you doing?
Good evening, Adam. Thank you very much.
There he goes with the beer.
A
little bit of information about Mark for you. Captain of Scotland Sevens for quite a few years, captain of the British Army and the Combined Services, and a barbarian to boot. Represented Scotland twice at the Commonwealth Games and in the World Series. And in 2011, led the British Army to victory in the Defence World Cup. And 5 years a pro, I believe, with Edinburgh and the Borders. So that's a heck of a rugby pedigree, Mark. You've been all over the world playing rugby.
It seems like a world away now, Adam, but I've converted to being an organic farmer, and I was thinking about this on my trip on my way down to Wales today. I think I've become organic because of the amount of fuel we burn travelling around the world playing sevens. So I'm just trying to do my little bit to get back on par, I think. Had an amazing sort of 10 years from the age of sort of 19 through to 31, traveling the world and seeing some amazing places and playing in some amazing stadiums. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant.
It's the sort of stuff from rugby legends that we can only dream of. But for people who haven't actually seen you play or didn't see you in full livery, I'd just like to share my screen here. So first question obviously is, was that a particularly cold day? What's with the gloves, mate?
Listen, we were sponsored to wear them, so I just took the money and wore them. They were designed to make you catch the ball better. That's why I was wearing them, because I wasn't very good at catching. That's what it was. But
I wish I'd had a pair. Sorry about that, but I just found that on the internet and thought people might like to see that. That's Mark, I'll come back to you in a sec. Let's just move quickly on. We've got two more fantastic co-presenters with me this evening. We've got Mr. Tony Scott. Good evening, Tony. How are you doing? You can say hello, pal, if you want. Are you with us, Tony?
Yeah, good.
Good man. Yeah, Tony is without doubt a rugby league legend, and I really mean that. As a boy growing up, just a bit older than me, everybody knew Tony Scott in West Cumbria. Many years of professional in the game and a farmer to boot. Set off, I believe, a farm, if I'm not wrong, at Stockmoor Farm in Broughton. So how did you end up in farming in Lockerbie?
That's correct, Adam.
How did you end up in Lockerbie?
Yeah, well, the farm was, it was required for open cast coal mining. So we had to find somewhere else to farm, which isn't an easy challenge, really. It's easy to find a new house, but you try finding another farm. It's not the easiest sort of thing. So we went through a process of like viewing farms, and we found one at Penrith that was in the public auction, which my father went and was the last bidder on the farm, but it didn't sort of make what the vendor was expecting, so it was withdrawn. So we didn't get that. The family is still in that farm at Tittle House. Then there was a one at Longtown, the Glebe at Heather's Gill, and same again, it was in the public auction. My dad bought that one also, and the well, when the coal board wanted the farm, my dad said he didn't want to sell it. He wanted them to pay for the next one because he didn't want to be under pressure to have to buy something, you know. So anyhow, when that come round, they wouldn't release the funds to pay for it. So we let that one down. And then this one came up at Lockerbie. And so we ended up a lot further than we sort of anticipated moving, but it's where we ended up at.
So you obviously must have got a half-decent settlement out of the coal board back in those days. I heard a rumour that your mum had something to do with it.
Well, on that second farm, when the coal board wouldn't release the funds, my mum wrote to Margaret Thatcher, who was the Prime Minister at the time. Seemed quite a crazy thing to do. But anyhow, within 3 days, the coal board officials were sitting around our kitchen table. So it worked. you wouldn't have thought doing something like that, but it did within 3 days. Yeah. So yeah, my mum did have a lot. She had a lot to do with a lot of things in our life, my mum.
Absolutely, they always do, don't they? And so you've always been a rugby league player, Broughton Red Rose.
Yeah. Well, I played rugby union at school with in the same age grade as your man at the main man despite, Mark Richardson. We'd be at county trials together with Mark. But then when I left school, well, before I left school, I've actually played under 18s at Broughton Moor. Cliff Hodson, who was a senior referee, he come and got me to go and play. And so it started at Broughton Moor. And the first match was at Worthbrow. That's where it started at. And there was a lot of Hereford Bullocks on the field when we went. And I thought that's why they took me to chest these off before we could play the game. And I thought that's why they actually took me.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic. Okay, we'll come back and have another chat with you in a second, Tony. Let me introduce you to our final fellow presenter today. It is, well, man, I can only honestly, truly say is one of my heroes. I was so fortunate to be able to play 2 or 3 seasons with him for Aspatria. It is, of course, the one and only Mr. Malcolm Brown, Cumbria legend, more than 50 caps for Cumbria, I do believe. And thanks for giving us the time tonight, Malcolm. He is this year and was last year Cumbria RFU President. So we are amongst esteemed company tonight, Malcolm. So you've actually had quite a connection through farming through your life, haven't you, Malcolm?
Certainly, Adam. Yeah, I mean, I was. My father was a farm manager. He started after the war. He started working in farming just outside of Aspatria, and he went on to manage quite a big mixed farm, Heathfield. And he managed that farm for the best part of 40 years until he retired, really. But obviously, I had 3 brothers, and we all grew up at home. And we used to get involved in all sorts of big mixed farm, hay timing, there was arable. I can remember trying to move turnip sheep and with frozen posts, trying to pull the posts out with a loader. And I went through the whole gamut. They grew a lot of potatoes. We supplied chip shops in Aspatria with potatoes and lots of local farmers. So really, farming upbringing there. And then I went off to college. I decided to have a little go at teaching. So I had 4 years at college, and then I came back and I met my future wife, who happened to be a farmer's daughter as well, actually. So he soon commandeered me into feeding sturks, and I remember I used to get up and feed sturks before I went to teach. So yeah, I've always had a link with it, really. I mean, I have a brother who was involved in insemination work with farming, and he ended up going in his mid-20s. He went to America and he never came home. And he is rather like Mark. He's an organic farmer in Montana. He has an organic farm out there. He keeps goats, Mark, unlike you. And they make cheese. They've got organic pigs, bacon, sausage, you name it, about 14 acres of vegetables, and they're doing quite nicely. Organic, as you probably know, Adam, organic food in the States, it reaches quite a premium, really. They can sell as much as they can make, really, of anything organic. So yeah, right through my life, I've got links with farming. I do just a bit of a hobby, kind of help out a little bit on a local farm at the moment, and really enjoy it. It's helped to keep me fit and healthy along the way. And like Scotty and Mark, you know, obviously I haven't had my own place, but I've always enjoyed the farming crack. I was young farmers. We had a great five-a-side football team at Aspatria when we were, unfortunately, the main striker passed away just 18 months ago. Les McTeer, Tony, who went on to be a famous fell farmer.
Absolutely.
But Les was the striker. Anthony Dalzell, who went on to run Hague's the Butchers.
Yeah.
We could have had 3 pies tonight, Adam, if you'd been in touch with Anthony.
Not from Anthony. I think we know him better than that.
And
yeah, great fella.
And one of the stalwart was Harry Wilk, who obviously has a few tidy sheep up at Arcombe there.
Absolutely. So let's just quickly talk rugby then, Malcolm. It's, do you know, until we had this conversation, I knew nothing about that. So isn't it amazing? I don't
know how I found time to be a teacher.
I only knew you as a brilliant rugby player and teacher as well, so it just goes to show. But a little birdie told me you're quite in connection with farming and still enjoying it. So thank you very much. Just a quick word about rugby then, because as I mentioned, you are absolutely we're an integral part of Aspatria Rugby Club in years gone by. I know you had a little bit in between down at Vale of Loon in the days when they were operating at a very high level. So what sort of persuaded you to go down there?
Down to the Vale?
Yeah.
Was, well, I mean, yeah, tremendous days with Aspatria, you know. I mean, a hell of an experience. Those days when six cup wins on the trot, and a group of local lads, you know, 15 or more local boys who were the core of the squad. It was tremendous, but just as things progressed, playing for Cumbria, in fact, there was a bit of a farming connection, really, because in the Cumbria side, which I went on to captain, Sam Hodgson became a very good friend, and he obviously was a legend in his own lifetime as a sheep farmer and a rugby player, England A and everything. But he was quite keen for me to join him for a season, and as it turned out, Vale at that time. You know, we're making a lot of progress. It became one of the top clubs in Lancashire. We won the Lancashire Cup. We had a guy called Fred Swarbrick who was in the Cumbria squad. He was a Cumbria player, but he was in the North squad that beat the All Blacks. Fred was a great fixture second. He started getting fixtures with Harlequins and Wasps and Bath, and it was a big attraction. So in the end, 7 or 8 Cumbrian lads went down to play for Vale. All of them kind of in the Cumbria squad, but they were very much a strong side, probably in the top 20 in the country. So that was the main reason I went. I had 5 great seasons there before I came back to Aspatria.
Came back home and instrumental amongst a lot of really good players in driving Aspatria forward and up the class levels, really, up the leagues, to the point where in the early 90s, Aspatria, a tiny little village on the Solway Plain, managed to get into National League 3, which is obviously an unbelievable achievement. But that squad in those days to get there was probably, would you say, one of the best ever Cumbrian teams, one of the best Cumbrian teams?
They'd be right up there. I mean, at that time, to get to that level, I mean, you were talking in the top 40 clubs in the country. I mean, just a lot of pieces in the jigsaw came together. You know, I mean, there were some very talented Cumbrian players. I mean, the halfbacks. You know, you're talking about George Doggett and obviously David Pearce, who went to get a full international cap. But I mean, halfbacks like that who could play at an England level. it was a hell of a squad. Tom Borthwick had done quite a following on the work from Dave Robley. Tom Borthwick had done a bit of work on the coaching side, and then we got David Robinson involved, who was a national hero, really. I mean, you know, captain of Gosforth and winning the Pilkington Cup on occasions. And he decided after time coaching Cumbria, he was brought on board at Aspatria and was responsible for a lot of networking. That it was virtually, as you know, Adam, when you became involved, it was virtually like Cumbrian countryside, and travelling, hell of a commitment, travelling the length of the country, or London, Southwest. I mean, you were left on a Friday lunchtime, and you came back on a Sunday night. I mean, and it was amateur rugby. Yeah, some great days. Some great days.
I want you guys to do all the talking tonight, but I'd just like to back up what Malcolm said there and give you an example. We really did feel we were representing Cumbria in those days, and I'll tell you a very quick little tale about going down to Plymouth the Saturday before Christmas, about 1993 it might have been, and it was a horrible, terrible windy and rain conditions, rain driving in off the English Channel, and it really was a dire day, and the pitch was flooded. And Malcolm said to us in the changing room, "Right, boys, we're going out to warm up, T-shirts and shorts only. We're going to show these southern softies what men of Cumbria are made of." And they were his exact words. And we went out there onto that pitch, and the first thing he made us do, right in front of the window to their dressing room, he said, "Get down on your bellies and we'll do 50 press-ups." And we did. And we could see them looking out of the changing rooms thinking, who are these madmen from Cumbria? And that was inspirational from Malcolm, because in that 5-10 minutes that we were out there, we actually warmed up for about 20 minutes. They didn't even come out the changing room. Conditions were that bad. And we beat them in those 20 minutes. And that was absolutely inspirational for me. Men of Cumbria, we used to say. So happy days. So thanks for that. Great memories.
How many press-ups did you manage?
Well, yeah, I had to do a bit of stretching in between as well. You know, very, very important to keep the quads stretched. No, not many. We probably managed 15 total, but happy days. So, Mark, yeah, you mentioned before now that obviously you're farming. How does a guy at the top of the tree in terms of Scottish rugby and obviously in the services as well, how do you end up to be making cheese in Trepenna?
We're a bit out of the way. It's down to my wife, really. My wife's family, the Grindleys, have farmed at Park House for, well, we'll be the third generation, sorry. The kids will be the fourth generation to have farmed there. And, well, I initially played professional rugby coming from university for about 6 or 7 years. And then I decided that I was playing for the Borders at the time and decided I wanted a bit more adventure. So I joined the army. I was in the army for about 10 years. Joined the King's Own Scottish Borderers. Got posted out to Northern Ireland. Did a bit of infantry stints out there, but decided that the rugby was too much of a calling, and ended up playing a couple of Commonwealth Games and the World Cup in the sevens, and that actually got me out of. In some ways, it probably saved me, because it got me out of going to Afghanistan twice and Iraq, because the army were pretty good with sport and allowed us to represent the country instead of going out to these war zones, which I eventually went out to, but not in an infantry capacity. But it was coming towards the end of my 10 years with the army, and I was managing the Scotland Sevens team at the time, and I was going to go for the job full time, but I didn't get it in the end. But the opportunity came up to also manage Jen's farm, because James, her dad, wanted to step back, so we said we might as well give it a go. So I hadn't even learned to reverse a trailer. I'd had nothing to do with farming in my life. Other than my school, having a school farm, I'd not been involved at all. So it was a baptism of fire, really, taking on a farm. And Jen, my wife, had been to college and lived her whole life as a sort of farmer before going into teaching. But where you've got to sort of get up to speed after about 6 months. You can tell the guys that have been doing it for sort of 4 or 5 years how to operate. And so I threw myself into it for sort of a year, 2 years, milking pretty much every day. And then, you know, after those 2 years, you sort of step back and you think about how you want to run the business. And we took it in a slightly different direction. They were milking Holstein cows, fully housed, 3 times a day. And we sort of hit the milk crisis. It was about 2014, 2015. I think we were getting nigh on 15 pence a litre, and it was costing us 28 pence a litre to produce it. We had to have a serious rethink. We went the whole opposite way. We went to a low input, low output sort of system. We sold the Holstein herd, which was a big call because Jen's dad and Tom Brown, the herdsman, had been breeding and getting the herd up to a decent standard for nearly 40 years. So that was a big call. And then we went over to Ireland and bought some Jersey Friesian crosses, set up the paddock system at home. And we've been doing that ever since for the last 6 years. And then a couple of years ago, we decided that we'd probably go down the organic route. And like every farmer, we complain about the milk price and thought, well, we could probably try and improve the price and put a bit of value onto the milk, which is like really good milk, and thought we'd give cheesemaking a try. And we've been at it now for 18 months and just won a silver medal at the National Cheese Awards, the Virtual Cheese Awards, which was judged last month. So we know we can make some good cheese. We've just got to try and get the volumes through. And it's fascinating. It's a fantastic lifestyle. You're fully immersed in it. And to have a bit of recognition as well has been really, really rewarding.
Well, congratulations for that. Absolutely outstanding. You know, setting off from a standing start and getting to there. And I do believe your cheese is available in local emporiums.
Yeah, the Trepenna Cheese Company. We've managed to get it into Cranston's now, and we'll be pushing on and up in the volume. And
well, that's absolutely tremendous. So just to remind anybody who's watching this evening, we're here with the Farmer Network podcast, trying to raise some funds for the My Name's Doddie Foundation to combat MND. Hopefully, if the technology is working right, you'll see some screens coming across with giving the details of the links to the foundation that you can follow to make a donation. If you're enjoying the crack with the lads, as I am this evening, or if you want to get in touch with the Farmer Network, we'll make sure that you have all the details, and hopefully we can do our little bit, and we're very pleased to do so. So we're talking about rugby union, and we're talking about rugby league as well. And of course, Cumbria has produced.
Adam,
hello.
Adam, can I just interrupt you a second?
Yeah.
Just going back to Mark there, and when he dispersed his head.
Go for
just
it.
As a coincidence today, when I got up this morning, I bought 6 heifers at your dispersal when you dispersed your Holstein herd, and they've developed into fantastic cows. Oh. And this morning. That was the first thing that greeted me this morning. It was a heifer calf. I'll do one of your cows, which is a little coincidence. That was just a little. So I congratulate.
Delighted, yeah, delighted.
It's a great story.
They've done really well, and they've developed into really, really good cows. But I had one heifer calf this morning of one, so that was quite a coincidence when I was going to meet you tonight. Yeah, sorry, Adam. Sorry, yeah.
No, I'm really pleased you put it into because that's a nice little story, and it kind of just shows how farming is connected in so many different ways. That's maybe a story for another day, but we will come back to that because I know you do like a good Holstein Friesian cow. Tony. We were just talking about the fact that so many good rugby league players have come out of Cumbria and still do. And we must, of course, remember some of our other friends from the farming community. And I'm thinking in particular of Rob Purdham, England international, who's these days back home farming again. And of course, remembering his brother Gary, who died in such tragic circumstances. But it certainly would want to mention those two great rugby players and great farming family down there in West Cumbria as well. So in terms of your rugby career then, how did you turn professional in the end? Because you were playing for Broughton, but living in Lockerbie. How did you end up playing professionally for Carlisle?
Well, Carlisle, we moved to Lockerbie in 1981. That was the year that Carlisle started a professional side. So I was just a boy, and with anything that starts new, there's always people that jump on the bandwagon, and everybody's very enthusiastic. Well, the pubs in Carlisle thought they would have a go and get some teams together. So there's about 10 pubs that gathered teams together. So they started a little league on a Saturday morning. And John Risman, he was sort of a bit behind it. He's been behind a lot of things as John. Very, very, very talented man. But he was, and so he phoned us up and he said, go and help one of these pub teams, just help them along, and you got other lads to do with other teams. So I did do, and so they played at 10:30 on a Saturday morning. So I played for them on a Saturday morning at 10:30. Then I went through to Broughton on a Saturday afternoon and played again at 2:30. So for a season, I played two games every Saturday. But the rugby league said I could only play for one club. So that curtailed that exercise. So just with one thing, I'd actually just played that next season for the Carlisle side. And at the end of that season, not at the beginning of that season, I think it was, no, they played a pre-season warm-up game against the professionals. Well, me coming out of West Cumberland, where there was an awful lot of, there was hundreds of kids in West Cumberland as good as me, but I stood out in that Carlisle league like a sore thumb, because they really didn't, they were very enthusiastic, but they didn't maybe understand the game so much. It was a football town. So after that game, I sort of made my mark against the professionals. The chairman, he pestered my life, just chasing me around, wanting me to sign. Well, I wouldn't, because with coming out of Broughton and the lads that were professionals, there's a whole host of them, Peter and Les Gawley, John Dobie, David Collister. Then before that, there'd been Brian Edgar, and I didn't put myself in that category by any stretch of the imagination. So I ended up, I went along and I played, and I ended up playing for about 14 and a half seasons, but I never ever signed a contract, because I didn't think I was good enough, because of the caliber of guys that I'd been brought up with. So if anybody wants a contract, they were sent them by direct postage, recorded delivery and everything, but I've got a drawer full of them. So I said, I'll come along and play, but I ended up playing the most games for the club of anybody.
So are you telling me, Tony, that you were never, ever poached, or the bigger clubs never came for you? Because I can't believe that.
Well, I was approached, but I had cows to milk. So Alex Murphy once wanted to take me to Huddersfield. I had some things with Alex. I played in Carlisle's worst ever defeat, St Helens' biggest ever win at Knowsley Road in the early days. We got beat 112-0, and there was only 3 of us ended up playing for the club again. There was lads standing on the touchline saying, take me off here. I was looking for somebody to clatter. I was chasing shadows anyhow. there was a policeman standing at the end of the tunnel, and I was going to hit him on the way off. It was just so much frustration. And Alex Murphy came in the changing room, put his head round the door, and I was just taking my boot off at the time, and he said, "Good game, lads." Well, I threw my boot at him. I said, "You wouldn't have said that if it'd been a good game." So we laughed about that for years afterwards. Another, we played at Headingley against. I was sort of at the peak of my job at that point. I was handling the job quite well, and whether it's true or not, but one of the people connected with the club, the backroom boys, said that Leeds come back after that match and said, "We want to sign that Scott boy." Well, there was a young lad on the bench that day called Ian Scott from Maryport, and they said the chairman it sold him to them. Whether that's true or not, but Ian did actually go to Leeds, but the fella said it was actually you they were after, but he said they knew I wouldn't go, so they'll get no money from me. So they could see opportunity. So whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it was suggested. But I wasn't going anywhere. My dad wouldn't have let me.
So you certainly in your career came across a lot of international rugby league players. Probably some of those big Australian boys. They'd take some stopping, did they?
Yeah, there's some really class players. You know, in that match there was Andrew Hettinghausen at fullback and just internationals. And there was a big crop called Sam Backo playing that day. He was the current Australian prop, and I could never really get weight on when I played. I was 14 stone, was all I could get to, but I could tackle anybody. It didn't matter how heavy they were. Well, this Sam Backo come and a crash ball under the sticks. If I don't tackle him, he scored. So I didn't know what to do. So I give him a right gobful of Cumbrian, and I shouted as I went to hit him. I shouted, "There's no way there's going to score today, Mara." And I hit him. So he's on the bottom. And he looks up at me and went, "What?" So it was, you did what you had to do. You did what you had to do. But no, I was never, it didn't matter how big they were. I was never overawed, but I couldn't put weight on.
I know certainly you never had a reputation as being a dirty player because you didn't play the game that way. You played hard but fair. Was that your ethos when you played? What went through your mind?
Yeah, well, I always played with the thought, we've all got to go to work on Monday morning. Yeah, we're going to play it hard. If we don't play it hard, we're going to get hurt. So you've got to play the game hard. But I still always had respect that, you know what I mean, I didn't, you know, we've got the situation with the lads that we're doing this for today. Well, rugby is one big family, as I've found throughout my life, whether it's rugby union, rugby league, you've got a connection with people. And anybody will do anything for them lads if we could. And this is as much as we can do what we're doing tonight. But I still always had respect for the lads I played against. But don't get me wrong, I didn't take prisoners, but I didn't go out. I always said we've all got to go to work on Monday morning. Was me thoughts really, yeah. Which, well, I had to go before that.
Because you were milking cows.
Yeah.
Malcolm,
yes.
What was your ethos when you played? How did you approach the game?
Oh gosh, just went out to enjoy myself, Adam. I think as much as anything, and I always felt as though I never wanted to let anybody down. You know, like you were saying, I totally make a similar point there. You know, you just gave your best out there, and I'm not sure I had an ethos really, to be honest. But I just wanted to enjoy myself. I do agree with Tony's mantra about lads having to go to work on a Monday. Okay. I never felt as though foul play was had any part in the game particularly. But I always just wanted to. I enjoyed the competition, you know. But I think before any game, whether it was a club game or a county game, or whatever, you kind of thought, well, who am I up against today? You know, but I just wanted to get out there, and I think I looked at it like that. Really, I mean, obviously there were there were classy players in other positions, but I just wanted to do my own job as well as I could, and I always tried to get one over on your opponent. You know, playing in the back, I played most of the time in the back row. I did actually enjoy. I played hooker till I was about 21, and then at college, the props were so small, I had to move to the back row. But I used to enjoy hooking. I think it must have been in the blood, Adam, because as you know, my brother was a fairly capable hooker.
Brother Nigel, another hero of mine.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But no, yeah. Just getting back to that, just Cumbria, Aspatria game. You'd look who was playing in the other back row, and you'd obviously they would have their attributes and their particular strengths, but I just saw it as that little competition within a game, really, and would always try and do my utmost to come out on top. Yeah.
That will to win.
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. And you learned a lot, you know. I mean, I just loved the game. I mean, right from when I was first off at Nelson Tomlinson School, you know, with Taft Pearson, who was our rugby guy. And I wasn't that, I mean, I was a bit like Tony. I mean, I did eventually put a bit of weight on Tony, but I was 32. I think I got up to, I managed to get to 15 stone in the end. But through my 20s, I was like 13 and a half, 14 stone. And you know, I always had a bit of ambition, I suppose. I never got to play for Cumbria. I used to get really upset. When I was at school, Taffy would say, "Oh, you've got a chance in that Cumbria squad," but I never ever got in one. And I finally made a Cumbria squad. I suppose when I came back from college, I think I was about 25, 24 maybe, when I got my first chance with Cumbria. And I'd worked hard for it, you know. I'd worked hard for it. Other lads played for Cumbria when they were 21, and then by the time they were 25, they'd stopped playing, you know. But I just worked my way through, really. And very proud to be a Cumbrian player. You know, when I did get my chance to a cap, it was very competitive in those days, like boys, wasn't it? I mean, we had Robbo. Robbo was one flanker. Peter Dixon was the other. You know, and then you were trying to get a game in front of these guys. Jackie Purdham. You talk about the Purdham lads. Jackie was in that back row. I mean, I think when they played together, Jackie and Robbo played flanker, and Peter Dixon played number 8 probably. But I mean, Peter Dixon was a British Lion. Talking about the Lions coming up, Dixon was a Lion before he played for England. He was rather not like Sam Simmons, but obviously because he has actually had a cap. But there's a few parallels there, really, I suppose. You remember Peter Dixon, Scotty?
Yeah.
I mean, he was a Bassenthwaite lad who went to St. Bees, but to be picked for the Lions before England, that was quite something. So they were in the back row, very competitive. Jackie Purdham was there as well, and then Vince Fox came along. I see Foxy now and again down at Silleth. He's retired to Silleth. I see him occasionally. He obviously went off to Tynedale there was a host of Cumbrian lads who used to go to Tynedale for a while, who were just around about my age when they were in the national leagues. But
Malcolm,
I digressed, Adam. You asked me about my ethos, and I've moved on a little bit. But you had to work hard to get anywhere near the Cumbria squad in those days. And of course, when you did, the great thing was that when you played Lancashire and Yorkshire in particular, you were playing against half the England team, you know, something that never happens today, really, unfortunately. They're in a bit of a bubble in the Premiership, but I mean, in those days, I mean, my debut for Cumbria was against Northumberland, and I think there was 3 English internationals and 4 Scottish. I didn't even touch the ball. But, hey, happy days, mate, happy days.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning Robbo there, of course, an absolute mentor of mine in my working life and in my rugby career, for even thinking about giving me a chance to join Aspatria, you know, and yeah, we'd like to send our good wishes to Robbo and all his family, keep in touch with them on a regular basis. But to have a man like Robbo as your coach, who no matter what your set plays were and how you were approaching it, Robbo's ethos was, if you see a gap, son, you go for it. You know, it was old school.
I could give you a funny little one here, Adam, about Robbo. I mean, obviously, he was an inspirational sort of guy, not only the way when he played, but as a coach for the younger lads. I mean, but he had his own way of doing things. You know, there's the famous story about when he went with the England squad and he took his shepherd's crook with him. You know, and he used to, if they weren't low enough in the rucks, he would give them a whack over the arse or the sorry. Yeah, we'll retape that.
No, you're all right. I think that one's allowed.
A whack on the backside or the back with his shepherd's crook to get a bit lower in that ruck. And he came up with all sorts of things. And there was one Cumbria season where he decided that the man of the match for the Cumbria side, and we had 5 matches those seasons. The man of the match, he decided, and this is a bit of a farming take on this, but he brought along a fresh mole that he'd caught. And he awarded after the dinner after the match, he awarded the man of the match with a mole. Okay, so you went up to the top table, and I can see it now at Motor. I think we were at Motor, and he said, "Right, we're going to present you with your award for today." And you had to put a mole in your top pocket. Not that I got it that day, but it was Andy McFarlane, I think. And anyway, and then the task was that the guy who got the man of the match had to bring a new mole to the game the week after. And, you know, just in terms of banter and crack for the lads. And I mean, I can remember going around that dance floor at Motor with, there was a mole being passed around between partners and rugby players. It was, just great banter and for jealous, you know, bringing the lads together in the squad and a bit of crack like so. And sure enough, the next week, a new mole turned up. I think Sam Hodson got it. And I don't know what Sam brought the week after. He could have, but I think he would do his best to try and get one. Yeah, so a legend, like just little things that nobody else would have thought of. You know, I mean, you can't imagine Eddie Jones turning up with a mole, can you? Really? You know,
not really. But Robbo, for me, just it has an absolute motivator, a glass half full all the time, and you just like following you around a pitch, you and Big Tank. You know, as I've said to you before, we'd have followed you 2 guys over a cliff, and Robbo was the same. You just wanted to work for the man. So
he was a motivator, Adam. All right. There were players used to hide from him during the warm up. They used to find somewhere to hide so that he didn't pick on them.
That's definitely so.
It is in his own way.
Mark, can come back to you now and talk about your career as an international. I mean, you're going onto a pitch in a World Series, you're facing the Fijians. What the heck goes through your mind when you step onto that pitch as Scotland captain?
Well, funnily enough, when I joined the British Army, I realised that the British Army at the time were recruiting soldiers from Fiji, and they were recruiting them because they were good soldiers, but there was also other attributes that were going to help the British Army along the way, and some of those attributes were some world-class rugby players. And so when I joined the army, I was the Scotland Sevens captain. But it was harder for me to get into the British Army Sevens team than it was the Scotland team at the time, because there was 8 Fijian internationals, there was 2 England internationals, and myself. And I distinctly remember the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne in 2006. Before we went, I was an officer in Dreghorn Barracks at 1 Scots, and one of my private soldiers was a guy called Apolosi Satala, and Satala ended up playing for Gloucester. He was the captain of the Fijian Rugby 15s team and the Sevens team. He won Hong Kong twice, I think. And when we went on a rugby tour of New Zealand, we went to the New Zealand All Blacks Museum, and the New Zealand public had voted for their best Sevens team of all time. And Satala's name was on it, and he was on the tour with us. So, you know, he was one of my privates in my company. And I remember shaking his hand at Dreghorn Barracks a month before we set off. And then the next time I saw him was in the tunnel of the Telstra Dome just before we ran out in front of 72,000 people. And I'd been training for 6 months to catch a ball above my head. So we'd been doing a lot of dynamic work, and you know, we'd got the All Black sort of kicking coach in to practice catching these kickoffs. And I just remember that first kickoff, and you know, the ball went up into the lights, and I just saw this massive black hand just whoop the ball away from me about a foot away, and Apo caught it on the run. He knocked off a guy called Nick DeLuca, who was probably our best tackler at the time, dinted 2 more tacklers off and scored under the post. And I just thought, this is going to be a hard day, lads. I think we managed to scrape a try off them through Rory Lawson, who we're going to chat to later on. He went under the post, but it was about 28-7. But you always felt that you had a chance. I mean, it's sevens is a 14-minute game, so you always felt that you had a chance. And if you keep control of the ball, then you do have a chance. But some of the athletes that we came up against were properly world class. And yeah, it was just good fun. Like Tony and Malk says, it's just good fun. You put your body on the line, and you know, that's all you can do. So you're chosen for whichever team you play for. You put your body on your line, and you just go for it. And that's what we did for those sort of 10 years. We had a motto which was "Go till it's black." So we used to be monitored. It was the very early days of the heart rate monitors, and they're all, the GPS trackers are built into the shirts now, so they can see where they run and they can measure heartbeats and stuff. But we had these plastic straps around our chest. So when we got tackled, we ended up with bruises across our chest. But my heart rate was registered in Wellington at 210 beats per minute. And when you go till it's black, means you go till you just about pass out. But that, I mean, that's just an example. You just put your body on the line, and the 2 lads here with us today, they do exactly the same thing. And that's what you're thinking about. Sevens as a game, like when you're playing it, isn't particularly enjoyable because it's hard work, but afterwards it's good fun.
Did you prefer sevens to the full 15-man game, or was it just a different experience?
Not really. I think it was more to do with the fact that I got selected more for the sevens than the 15s. There were some really good players sort of in the mix when I was there. When I signed my professional papers, I was a scrum half. I was sort of 6'2" and 15.5 stone. I was a big guy for a scrum half. But the Scottish scrum halves at the time were Gary Armstrong, Jed Forrest, and Brian Redpath, who me and Malk saw recently at a Sedbergh game when we had a beer with him. And you know, these guys were world class. And I was just a young lad coming through, and then I swapped positions to back row after a suggestion from a guy called Frank Haddon, who was coaching us at the time, that I needed to move. You know, there was more opportunity for me in the sevens, and I enjoyed the lifestyle. I mean, you know, waking up in a hotel and opening your curtains and seeing the whole of Hong Kong Harbour in front of you. You know, that sort of thing year in, year out was just phenomenal. And playing in front of the stadium, the crowds, playing against the players that you played against. There was one year when I was only in the country for 3 months because we were traveling so much. And, you know, for a young lad, that's a fantastic opportunity and experience. And I wouldn't have missed it for the world. And you get to meet some lifelong friends. And I tend to find that rugby folk have a similar mentality. So we met guys from all around the world, just about every country, and they were all good banter afterwards. They wanted to play to the edge on the pitch, but they'd have a beer with you and they'd have a crack, and they were all really good lads. So I met very few idiots around the world. And I think that's what we're talking about today when you speak about what we're trying to raise money for. Like everybody would give their time, their effort, just to help anybody out in need that's you know, you've shed blood with and you've shed sweat with.
Brilliant, and thanks for leading us very nicely back in. Just to reminding our audience that we are here this evening having a chat about rugby and farming, but hopefully to raise some money for the My Name's Doddie Foundation to combat motor neurone disease. We mentioned earlier about the fact that we've seen in the media recently Doddie and Rob Burrow from Rugby League and Stephen Darby from football sort of charting their journey with this disease, and this is Cumbrian farmers and Cumbrian rugby players just trying to do a little bit to support the foundation, and we've got a few minutes left for a bit of a crack. So I think I'd like to ask you, Tony, next. Have you ever considered, did you ever consider playing the 15-man code, or indeed did you play rugby union?
I did play, like I said, schoolboy rugby union, and then as I explained how my life panned out, you do what your pals do, really, don't you? If you're playing at Wicton or Aspatria, you go with your pals, don't you? You go where life takes you. And the village was full. Everybody played. When I lived in Broughton, if I travelled 3.5 miles, I could have played for 18 rugby teams. I would only have to travel 18 miles, 3.5 miles. Yeah. And there was 18 rugby teams within. Don't get me wrong, that was rugby union and rugby league and working in town, professional. But there was 18 rugby teams without 3.5 miles of home. So, and then obviously I was there that long at Carlisle. Well, I played to the last match. I scored the last try in the last ever match, and then they were going to Barra, and they wanted us to go down there. Well, it was going to be 1,000 miles a week. I said, no, I've done 14.5 years. But I played another 7 years amateur after that again. I just loved the game, and just loved every minute of it, and the people I met. And so the only rugby union I played after that was like over 35s.
You did?
John Cusack. John Cusack, we played in John's retirement game. He played 45 seasons and never made a tackle. Is that about right, Malcolm?
That's about right. That's about right.
He never dirtied his shirt. But yeah, I played with. Yeah.
I was thinking, we did, Tony, the Rams, of course, the Cumbrian Rams.
That's right. We did. We played in
as they were known.
Yeah, but just fantastic, and it didn't matter which code. We're all one big family. The rugby family, it really is. Yeah.
The Rams was a great setup, Tony. Yeah, I mean, like you say, you got. I mean, you talk about your Broughton. Rizzo was involved, obviously, and Mike Rafferty. You know those.
Yeah.
And then Billy Pat, I think. Did I remember? Peter Gobb, definitely the Gawley brothers.
And Mitchell, yeah.
And Mitch, of course, yeah.
Great player.
Yeah.
You do still follow rugby union, don't you, Tony? Do your lads still play?
Two boys that both played for Scotland. They were term coach, mind you.
How did you allow that?
To me, are you English? I don't know. I don't know how that come. They were all born up here, but they all wore kilts at the wedding, but I didn't. But but no, you know, people say to me, "Are you English?" And I said, "No, I'm from Broughton," because I'm proud of what I am. But anyhow, both of these boys played for Scottish, the age grade. But I said they both got injured at 19 and 20. The eldest one, he was a good lad, but he wasn't big enough. But he was playing. He played with Richie Graham and these boys, and so there was, you know what I mean. He wasn't a lot of them. Well, Chris Fazzaro was just retired. Well, he played with Chris, and they played the Exiles over at Newcastle. So the Scottish lads played the Exiles over there, the trial game, and Chris was the captain, and he went round the changing room, and he thumped every player as he was going round to motivate them. Well, he thumped our lad. Well, he let welt, and they were fighting on the floor, the pair of them, but neither of them were big. But they just had this fire in the belly, and they were physically fighting on the floor. But the pair of them went out and they destroyed it. The exiles well, the other lads, but these two were just awesome. So the fire was in the belly there, and just brilliant. And the young one, he played under 16, under 20s. It was just stories. It's just connection. But one of them was the under 20s. He was training, and Alan Tate was the defence coach, but he was a defence coach for the whole of Scotland, and he was training. The wife did 10,000 miles with this kid in I don't know how many months, taking him up and down to Edinburgh, and he was training. He come home from training one day, and he said, "There's a guy up there just talking like you." Right? I said, "Who is it?" He says, "I don't know." He said, "They're calling him Tatey." Right? And I said, "Hey, come with me." So I went in and I rattled through a lot of old programmes, and I gave him a programme when we played against Widnes, and Jonathan Davis had played, and Magnifier, and Alan Tate, and I said, "Take that back and give him that." So he took it back, and it was Alan Tate but his dad played for Workington, so he went to school at Moor Close there. So after that, Alan just sort of took him under his wing and looked after him, and it just connections, and yeah. But no, they met a lot of another the same guy. He went to a summer camp. No, it was a camp at Wellington College in Berkshire. There was six international teams there for a week, like under 16 kids. Absolutely amazing place. And
yes.
we had 3 matches to play. There was one on the Monday, one on the Wednesday, and one on the Friday. Well, we wanted to support him and go and see him, but we had cows to milk and then other family members. So me and the wife went down on the Monday, on the Sunday for the Monday match, and we watched this match, and we went well. Then we drove back. It was 780 mile round trip or something like that. So we drove back, and then my son and daughter, they drove down to watch the Wednesday match. And then me and the wife were going to go back down to watch the Friday match. So we put a few miles on the car. Anyhow, on the Thursday, he phoned us up. He said, "Dad, bring some milk." Right? "What do you want milk for?" Because he told them he'd been getting them out of bed in the morning because the kids wouldn't get up and that, and we didn't be in a farm, and it's just the banter, the different ways of life, where you came from, walks of life, but you're all one, aren't you, in rugby? And Adam Hastings was playing. Gavin's the lad is playing now, and Gavin was there. He was there all week, and at the beginning of the week, Gavin said, "Tell us, which college does he go to?" I said, "He doesn't go to school." I said, "He works with me on the farm." So it was a talk. But by the end of the week, they were all our best pals. It was brilliant. So I filled a 25-litre drum of milk out the bull tank, and I put it on ice, and we drove down to Berkshire with this. So I said to Gavin Hastings, he says, "Well, Gav," I said, "if we win this match today," I said, "I haven't got champagne on ice, but I said, I've got the milk." So anyhow, they were playing France, and so they come for this milk and took it in the changing rooms. Well, this just went down an absolute a storm with them, but they'll always remember the celebratory drink of 25 litres of milk.
Lockerbie milk.
That's but no, just stories.
Scottish milk to Scottish players. There might be some future in that. There might be some future in that. What a great sponsorship deal that would be, wouldn't it?
it would be illegal, Mark, wouldn't it? Because it wasn't pasteurised. But straight out the bull tank. But all them rugby lads in Broughton, all them professionals and that, all them big lads, a lot of them we brought up on our milk, so it didn't do them any harm. We hadn't poisoned anybody anyhow.
And it just did make me chuckle before when you were talking about a little scrap in the changing room. And I think Malcolm's probably going to know what's coming, because I once told this story after doing a speech. But the one thing I remember about playing for Aspatria in those days was, it was still amateur, but the club tried to do everything it could in a professional manner. So when we trained, first team against second team, all those second team boys wanted to be in that first team. So it was always full on. Malcolm's favourite warm-up game in training was, for the first 5 minutes, was murder ball. No holes barred. And let me tell you, when you go to your first training session, who did he throw the ball to first? Yeah, you got it. Testing me out. But, you know, in that changing room before the game, when we were doing that warm-up, you know, there was one day we went to Morley in Leeds, second division, division above us, you know, really high standard, a few internationals playing. And Malcolm wasn't quite feeling, we didn't quite have it in the changing room. So we walked up to our second row, Tony Clementson, who most teams in Cumbria absolutely feared. Clemo was an absolute legend. I was frightened of him and I played with him. And Malcolm gave him a good smack round the chops and said, "Tony, I'm just not feeling this." And of course, Tony went ballistic. Those two set to at it. The whole team went at it. And I was sat in the corner thinking, what the hell's going on here? But that was the intensity of the game even in those days. And I tell you what, we ran out in that game and we actually beat Morley. So yet more inspiration from Mr. Brown in those days, but it was full on and totally competitive. It's just the way it was, wasn't it? Malcolm, let me just briefly, quickly, because we're just about running out of time, although I could talk to you guys all night. And we are here, of course, for the Miners Doddie Foundation, and hopefully with anybody who's enjoying this is going to contribute in some way, and anything at all would be gratefully received. And a big thank you to some of our sponsors, who you'll see their names either at the start or the end of this, and we'll have that on social media as well. Big thank you to all those organisations connected to farming in Cumbria who have sponsored us. But Malcolm, just tell us a little bit about your presidency this year. What's that going to entail, do you think?
I think I see my role, really. I'm really looking forward to getting around as many of the Cumbrian clubs as I can. I mean, I've had a chat with Tank about I would like to try and, one of the things I really enjoyed as a young player coming through, and it's something we haven't had for quite a while, but is to get a few, like the Cumbria Presidents, 15 games, Scotty. I know with you might remember them being played, Tony, way back. I mean, before I played for Cumbria, there were games to, I think lots of clubs are going to be looking to generate some funds this year and maybe have special games, and there's windows in the calendar. So I'd like to try and maybe get one or two Presidents games going, where if I can get around and try and get some decent sides out for special games on Sundays, maybe to raise a bit of money for clubs and get a bit of extra revenue. So I'd certainly see that as part of my role, and also just to make sure that, obviously wearing my other hat, make sure that the schools get the school rugby gets going again, and the youth rugby. I mean, it's called age grade rugby these days, but certainly, I mean, there's lots of, my heart goes out to lots of young lads within the county, and there'll be many from farming communities, to be quite honest, because as always, I mean, a number of young lads from the farming side will be involved in school side and club sides. But you think of the representative lads who might have had a chance of playing north of England this year, or even get to an England squad at under 16, under 18, and throughout the country there'll be a number of boys who've missed out on the opportunity to get a national shirt, and north of the border as well, Scotty. Obviously, the same will be true for Scottish school sides and Scottish Colts and what have you. That's another angle really that's probably been passed over, but there'll be a significant number of youngsters who have missed their window for a chance to get a national cap. So to get the schools schools games going, the college games up and running, and make sure that, you know, like we were saying earlier, Adam, when we spoke earlier about Cockermouth having 4 teams and Penrith 4 teams, Cockermouth 3 teams. I mean, it's been the case for a number of years now that numbers of players within clubs are falling. So I think anything at all we can do to stimulate the interest of the game and get lads playing rugby again in clubs will be very important in this season from September. Yeah.
Thanks, Malk, and thanks for mentioning the clubs, because that's what rugby's all about. You know, for the vast majority of players that never ever reach a representative level, those of us who've enjoyed our club rugby over the years, I've got my Aspatria shirt, my Penrith shirt hanging on the back door. Unfortunately, I don't have a Cockermouth shirt, my home club. My nephew's club captain there, so good luck to those guys, Sam and the guys this year when you finally get going. I know you're training like mad. Yeah, so if you're missing your number 3 shirt from the 1993 first team, it kind of finds its way into my bag on the last day, but don't tell anybody, all right?
Adam, it's no problem, mate. Hey, Adam, I've got the number 6.
Final open question before we leave it there, guys. Thank you ever so much for doing this, raising money for the My Name's Doddie Foundation. What's going to happen with the Lions? Can they win the series? Open question. Who wants to have a go?
Well, I'll kick off. I think they've got a great spread of selection this time. I think traditionally, when you have a look at when the Lions have done well, they've had good representation from all the countries, and that's because there's no real weak country, and competition's fierce in all the positions. So I think I'm hopeful this year that the Lions will come out on top. It's important that they dominate up front against the South Africans. I think it's going to be a bit of a power play, but if we have a look at some of the Six Nations games, those Irish and those English forwards are really powerful up front, and I think they're the match of anybody in the world. And then you bolt on some of the skillful guys from other nations, then we've got a really good mix. It's all about teamwork. It's all about building that team early, and I think that sort of rugby mentality that we spoke about before, where everybody is of the same mindset, the honour of wearing like a Lion shirt will come through. So I'm really excited. I think they'll do well. Don't know what anybody else thinks.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good squad of players. Some talent in there this time. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mark? What do you think? I think they must give them a bit of an edge, really. The fact that the Springboks have played so little rugby in recent months. Would you say?
Oh, you just froze there.
You're back. You're all right. You're back.
I had your face frozen in my screen there, Matt.
Oh my word! How awful for you.
Yeah, listen, these guys are world class. They'll enjoy all their rugby, and they'll be good whenever they play. I suppose game time's the key to it, but most of the South African team are playing for Sale anyway in the Premiership, so I think they're all getting game time, aren't they?
Right.
Well, there you are, folks. You heard it first from our 3 experts there. They all think we've got a great chance in South Africa, and fingers crossed. So look, let's bring this hour-long podcast to a finish. I'd like to say a huge thank you to you 3 guys, all legends in the rugby sphere, all still involved with farming in various degrees, and I'd just like to say a big thank you for giving us your time this evening. I'd love to have carried on this, and maybe one day, who knows, we could maybe do it in a rugby club somewhere and carry on raising money in the future, but that's for another day. But
as long as it's not, Adam, as long as it's not the rugby club in the sky.
You're dead right. We're all here.
Not just yet.
No, there's plenty of life left in us all, God willing. And so many more stories I know you've got, and I know you guys can tell. But I hope our audience have enjoyed it tonight. As you know, we're raising money for the My Name's Doddie Foundation. So we'll give you the links to that. And hopefully, if you've enjoyed the crack with these legends, you know, hopefully you can give us a little bit of support for the foundation. And good luck, guys, in farming and rugby. And hopefully we'll see you again in the near future. But for now, on behalf of the Farmer Network, can I say a big thank you to you all. And we'll see you again soon. Cheers.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.